Hello guys. So last time we did a program where we were able to understand how we can use promises when there is a delay in a function, which means the job is asynchronous. Continuing the same, let us try to understand one more example where I am generating a random number. Let us understand this simple piece of code. I am generating a random number, but again after a delay of 6 seconds. So to generate random number, I use math.random, which gives me a number which is random between 0 and 1, say 0 0.1, 0 0.2, 0 0.8, like that, from 0 to 1. If I want to get a random number between 1 and 10, then I can multiply it by 10. And to convert it into an integer, because I will get some decimal value, I can use math.float. Now, again, I'm having a delay, which means I need to use promises. But this time, we will have a simple condition. What is the condition? The condition is that promise is successful, means we call resolve function when random number is even. Promise is failed, means we call reject when random number is odd. This is my condition. So let us now try to run this piece of code. First thing, I'm going to create a promise object. To this, I'm going to pass a function, and resolve and reject are the two functions. Move this code inside the promise object. And instead of return, I'm going to write my logic first. So what is my logic? My logic is if random number is an even number, then the promise is successful. So I call the resolve method and pass the random number. If the promise fails, which means the random number generated is odd, then I'm going to call the reject, and again I'm going to pass the random number. Now, the next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the then and catch function. So let us come back here again and write our code. Promise object dot then, which is when the promise is successfully resolved, and to this I'm going to pass the random number, and I'm going to alert writing promise is successful and random number is the value that we are getting, which is random number. Now we have to also handle when the promise fails, so we use the catch. And again, it gets a random number, but mind you, this time the promise has failed. So I'm going to say error because the generated random number is odd and value equal to the value, which is random number again, which is what we are passing in the reject. Again, the pairing is resolve calls the function inside then, reject calls the function inside catch. Now let us try to run this piece of code and see our output. Open the console, and I think there is a small error on line number 24. Let me just see what happened. Probably I might have done some small error here. Promise OB not defined. Okay, I need to also write here promise OB, which is a return value from this async function. I'm saying async because this function takes time. Let us try to again run this piece of code. Cannot read properties of then. Okay, I have done a small error again, but no issues. The error is that I need to also return the promise object, right? So let me return the promise object, which I've done here. And now if I run this piece of code, my function execution starts. And then after a certain amount of time, I should get the result, which is error because the generated random number is odd and the value equal to 9. Fantastic. Do not worry about this error thrown by JavaScript because the promise has failed. Again, let's try to run this piece of code and see what is the output we are getting. And this time the promise is successful and the random number is 8. So that is how we are able to also have a proper conditional example, because sometimes the operation can fail, sometimes the operation can succeed. It can be sending request to the server, doing some complex calculation with some constraints or something similar. But this is how we can implement promises with resolve and reject.